Okay, my screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Till now, we were able to create the pods, services, deployment, replica sets, and all using some kubectl commands. Okay, kubectl create, kubectl run, and all those commands we have used, okay, to create some resources in Kubernetes, also called as objects. Okay, but that is useful in terms of troubleshooting or for learning purpose. But in production environment, we'll be using Kubernetes manifest. The what is Kubernetes manifest? It is a file written in a YML or a JSON format. We'll be writing all the Kubernetes in the YML formats. So what does that YML file have? It has the desired state for a particular resource. It can be pod, services, deployment. Okay, we'll define what should be the desired state and what we should create. Okay, so it is also useful for versioning, repeatability, and automation. We can share this with anyone and they can use it. We can have various versions for that file. Okay, so depending on the task, we can use that Kubernetes manifest. So how is the Kubernetes manifest file structured? It will have all the files will have this four common objects, you can say. The first one will be the API version for the particular object. It can be pod, a service, or deployment. What should be the API version for it? Then the kind, what kind of resource we are creating, whether it is pod or a service. Then metadata. Metadata means the details about the object, what for what we are creating that manifest file. And the specification means the configuration or the image file and all. So one of the sample manifest file is given here. There are a couple of them. So this is the manifest file for deployment, this is for cluster IP, and this is for node port. So from now onwards, we will be creating a file name .yml, for example deployment.yml, nginx cluster ip.yml, nginx node port.yml. And in that, if you see, we have this common fields. Okay, in all we have this four common field which we learned earlier: API version, kind, metadata, and specification. API version, kind, metadata, and specification. So this is the latest version for deployment is v1. Okay, apps v1 it should be. For service it is v1. For service it is v1. Okay, so what kind of resource we are creating here? Here we are creating deployment, here we are creating service and service. So metadata, what is the name of this deployment? It should be nginx deployment. And for service, it should be a cluster IP here, and here it should be node port. Then we define the specification for this deployment, and here for the services. So let's go from the bottom, or actually we should go from here. So specification, what we are defining? First we are defining a label. Okay, metadata for a template called label, that the app we are creating should have the label as nginx. The deployment which we are creating should have a label as nginx. Okay, and this label is selected here above. Okay, and for that label it should have three replicas. Okay, so first we define the label here, and what we are defining for that label, that it should have three replicas. Then here at the bottom we are defining a specification, that we will be creating a container whose name will be nginx container and the image will be nginx latest. Okay, so this is how the deployment file is created. So we don't need to remember this. Okay, I'll show you how to get this ready made. Okay, then for service, again the three fields will be common, only v1 service and metadata will be different. Then the specification, again selector app. Okay, this service we are creating for this app. So here we have defined a label as app nginx. Okay, so we are selecting that nginx here specification, that create a service for this app nginx for a type cluster IP. That is, in this, using this file we'll be creating a service for a cluster IP, and for which application? App equal to nginx. Okay, selector, we are selecting a label here. What is the label? Label is defined here, app nginx. Similarly, for this nginx label here, we are defining a node port. So one more example. Here we are defining a deployment. Here we are defining a service. Okay. So the first part is we are defining a definition for deployment. Here we defining a replica set that will be having three replicas. And here is a pod definition. That pod is having a label as Nginx app. Okay. It should use Nginx image. Okay. Name of the container will be Nginx and it will run on port 80. Again, this app is selected here. Okay, why? Because we want to create a service for it. For Nginx app, create a service, my service. Okay, so this is how we create a manifest. Okay, so we'll see a small demo for it, then it will be more clear. And if we go, the same thing is also given here. So if you see, I have given this link. Let's go to this link. So in this link, if you want to see for a service resource, okay, what should be the version, API version? So it should be version 1. That's why we have written here for service. Okay, it's not given here. Here it will be for service, it is version 1. Similarly for deployment, we will see apps v1. Okay, so on this site kubernetes.io docs, okay, we can search anything. Like I'll search for deployment. Okay, so it is giving the details for documentation for deployment. Okay, and this is the sample file, almost the same. Okay, so we can just copy it from here. Okay, add your image, for what purpose you're creating image, give the name. Okay, mostly the image name itself is the name here, or we can change the port as per our requirement. So we don't need to remember this file. It is available in the documentation. So we will start our lab now. kubectl get all. After that, after the lab I'll take your questions. So I've done cleanup before the class. Okay, so we'll be doing this exercise, that is create two namespaces, development and prod, using manifest. Yesterday we created namespaces using kubectl imperative command. Today we'll be using the declarative way, that is using manifest. Okay, so there can be a question, what is a manifest in interview. So if you see, the cluster is up and running, everything is clean up. Let's see what are the default namespaces which we have. So I am having default node release kube public and kube system. These are the default one. If you have created using any imperative command, it will also list here. So delete that using kubectl delete namespace, the namespace name, because again we are creating the same thing today using manifest. So I'll create my first namespace manifest. So for manifest, it is very simple. You don't have to define any container and all. So only the namespace we are creating, which is having a name dev. Okay, and the next one will be prod. So for prod also I'm creating a manifest. In this we'll define a prod namespace. Okay, so we have two files, cat dev namespace and prod namespace. Okay, so command to create the namespace will be, first let's check what are the namespaces we have. We don't have dev and prod here. So kubectl create, okay, hyphen f, file name of the manifest, f, enter. Okay, we can use create. Okay, but due to some reason, if I want to make any changes in it, I want to rename it as something else, and after renaming it, if I again use kubectl create, okay, so what it will say, it already exists. Okay, so it is always recommended to use apply. When we do apply, it will also create, and the changes also it will, means any number of times I can use apply. So now onwards I will not use create, so it is saying unchanged. Okay, I'll always use apply, but we can also use create. Create will be used only one time. After that, after making changes, we'll have to use apply. So why not to use apply right from the beginning? So now I'll create kubectl apply hyphen f. For prod also I'm creating a namespace. Okay, so kubectl get namespace. So I have two namespaces, dev and prod. Okay, so I don't need to remember the commands. Just save this two files, prod and dev, in GitHub, and whenever we want, just download it using git clone or whatever we want, and just do kubectl apply prod and kubectl dev, and we have the namespaces. So if I do a number of times, it won't change it. Kubectl get namespaces. So we have created namespace dev and prod. So this was exercise number 5. Okay, so if you have any questions now, just let me know.